Hi, so I'm working on chapter 8 exercise now, and I have the index.html open in the text editor, and well, I guess I have the whole project open in the text editor, and I have the index open in the browser, specifically using Chrome this time. Sorry. And I need to make the changes, of course, according to the chapter 8 instructions. So the first one is to add a meta element, like the one shown in figure 8. So the easiest thing to do, of course, is to go back to chapter 8 and see that meta element. Nothing needs to be changed on this meta element. Just type it exactly as it is on page 297, and you'll be able to, and it will work. So a lot of the changes that we'll make, particularly in this chapter, a lot of the changes that you make will not look right, or will not ultimately make the effect that you wanted them to make until after you've completed some of the other steps. So don't be too concerned if something isn't exactly like you expected it to until you get to the end, and then you might need to go backwards and troubleshoot. But in the beginning, I would suggest, as you work through this chapter in particular, that you just kind of keep moving forward. And then if you need to go backwards, like I said, when you get to the end, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to go to, sorry, I need to make space for myself. All right. I'm going to come to line 6. Typically, and there's no requirement, but typically I like to keep the meta tags together and the link tags together, but in the HTML head. But there's no necessity to do that. But that's where all meta tags are going to go, and all link tags. And later in this chapter exercise, you'll see that there will be some script tags added too. All of that goes in the head element of the index.html. That will allow all of these to affect the background of the HTML itself, so, or work in the background. So I'm going to add in name is equal to report, and content. As you see, I'm typing exactly the same thing that it shows on the page. Okay, the device width. Oops. Initial scale is equal to 1. And this will allow us to make the site responsive, to be able to determine from the device itself what its width is and how we need to work with this page. So this is going to go in with the media queries that we're going to use later and allow us to be able to size this appropriately or style this appropriately for what size the devices that we're using. And then, of course, it tells us, to look at this in Chrome too. And basically, that means that it's not resizing for us, and that we're going to be able to do our own styling for it. So, we'll just keep going. The next is to convert the fixed widths to fluid widths. If you're somebody who happens to be nervous, anxious, scared, concerned about math, don't worry. It's okay. We're only going to do a tiny bit of math for this class. But there is a small formula, I guess, that we will need to change some of these percentages. So we'll get there, but you have some examples in the book, and I'll show you the examples here as well. So one of the things that you need to keep in mind when we're making a page, or specifically when we're making this page responsive, we want it to look good. It doesn't have to look exactly the same, but we want it to look good on all different device sizes. So it looks good. We like how it looks at this point on the desktop. But if you just made this all very much smaller, go on a phone, for example, it wouldn't look good. It would just be too small to read. The text would be too small. The pictures would take up too much space with such small text. So we're really going to adjust this to actually look right on different devices. Even, like I said, even if that's not exactly the same, even if it doesn't look exactly the same on all different devices. But one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that when we're making this responsive, we're actually going to adjust the width, but the height, we're going to let it take up the space that it needs to take. So we're not going to cut the height off. And that also means as we're going along, we don't need to, we probably won't be changing much as far as top and bottom padding or top and bottom margins. We usually leave those alone, but the right and left paddings and margins will change. As well as, going back in number 4, we'll, in the CSS file, in the main.css that we're using, the width of the body shouldn't be 800 pixels anymore, because it would try to be 800 pixels even if the device itself was only 400 pixels. And we don't want to scroll back and forth, so horizontally scroll. So instead, we're going to set that in percentages. So it will display as the width will be, the width will be 99%. So whatever size it is, it's going to take up 99% of it. But we don't want it to ever get too big to look right. So we're going to set a max width to be 960 pixels. And that just means no matter how wide the screen is. So even if I'm using, this wide screen, it's never going to become this, wide, odd-looking page. It's not long enough to want it to be very wide. You still want to have your page make sense. So in all the sizes. So max width we're going to set, and that's all that happens in number 4. So we set the width to 99%. And if you set it to 99%, that means that your text or your borders or whatever you have going to the edge of your page don't bump up against the very edge of the screen. People don't generally like to see, especially text, that much of anything that bumps up against or runs into the edge of the screen. Unless, of course, it's intentional, like if you have an image that fills the entire screen or something, you certainly could do that. But keep that sort of thing in mind, that humans like to have a little bit of border on the outside of what they're looking at. Probably coming from our use of paper before, but anyway. So then we also need to change some widths of the section and aside elements and key elements and etc. in number 5. So I'm just going to go through and make some changes there. I'll go find my section. And this is when I need to use that little formula of what I told you. And the formula is only, and I'm going to give myself a little comment here to remind me what I'm doing. My little formula is the pixels of what I'm currently working with, 525, divided by the pixels of what the base was. So in our case, it was the 800. So we've already changed, that to a percentage, but if I recall correctly, that was 800. So I'm dividing 525 by 800 and then multiply by 100 to turn it into a percentage. So if I do that little math, I'm going to have 525 divided by 800 times 100. And this percentage can take lots of decimals. So I can just put all of that in, 65.625%. So now instead of this 525 pixels, I have 65.625. And I'll go ahead and save that. And then I'll go ahead and make all of those changes, or make those changes to all of the other elements that are listed on instruction 5. And I'm going to pause while I do that.